India, US. So wherever you're logging in, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. And I look forward to hearing and seeing where you're from. So as you join in, just share which part of the world are you from. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming in. We have our guest, Sai Srinivasan, who's logging in all the way from the US. And he's been very kind. It's a Saturday morning, and he's made time for us. As everybody logs in, may I request we'll play a short video and then we'll come back on.
The ABA, the American Bank Association, is a trade association for all the banks in the United States. We've been around for over 100 years. It's one of the oldest trade associations, and we have over 3,000 plus members. So there are about 4,700 banks in the United States. I could sort of go beyond that, but just round it off at 4,700. Most people think of 4 or 5 of the largest banks if you're living in the big metro areas, but there are lots and lots of banks. Banks of all sizes, from the largest sort of GSIBs, global, systemically important banks, to regional, mid-sized banks, to a long number of what I call smaller banks, community banks, working with branches all around the country, every nook and cranny of the country. So we're a trade association. We work closely with the banks on sort of policy issues, data analysis, advocacy, training, and education. Yeah, I've been with the ABA for just under 2 years. Before I came here, I was working for the federal government at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, working on big bank issues, also ag market issues. I was chief economist there, did a lot of policy work, regulatory rulemaking. But I always had this eye on the world of banking. My name is Sai Srinivasan. I'm the Deputy Director in the Division of Clearing and Risk at the CFTC. Various best practices have been laid out by the ARC for SOFR. And one of the key developments in recent months was ARC publishing a set of best practices for market participants to actually stop using LIBOR and transition to SOFR. The question has always been while we've been working on building liquidity in SOFR and getting people to start using SOFR, at some point people have to stop using LIBOR.
The share prices, we've been tracking share prices, and as of yesterday, we had seen that most of the bank stocks were sort of back in sort of normal territory in terms of day-over-day changes. We also been looking at sort of the core plumbing in the market, where we see signs of stresses, the repo market, the SOFR market, and the Fed funds market. And while there has been sort of volatility for various reasons, it's not just what's happening in sort of a microcosm in our industry, but in a corner of the industry, but also Credit Suisse and so on and so forth. If you look at it from a totality perspective, the market is functioning as sort of theory would predict, which gives us comfort that it's doing its right job. And so all the signs are towards the market in terms of pricing. When people use the term crisis, I don't see any crisis in terms of what the market prices are signaling today.
good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video. It would have given you a great perspective on Sai and where he's from. So, as you're logging in, can you just tell me where you're logging in from? And so we can get a good idea because, Sai is in the US and we're here in India today and people are logging in from everywhere. So, thank you so much, Dipankar, Guru. Thank you, Mohammed, for joining in. And at this stage, I'd like to invite Sai, our guest for the evening. Sai, welcome, Sai.
Hey, Madit. Good to be here.
Great to see you. And thank you so much for making time on a Saturday morning. I know how busy people are in the US and, you guys have all your calendar booked up. But thanks so much again. Yeah.
It's a pleasure, man. Anytime.
Okay, great. Sai, why don't you just, I know everybody sort of had a look at your video and your impressive achievements. Why don't you just share with everybody, what's your journey been, right? It'll be great for everybody to kind of see and learn.
That's a long conversation with it, but there's part of me which has never left 14th Road in Chembur in Mumbai. I'm still the same, confused, lost child, I guess. But it's it's a series of coincidences and fair amount of risk taking. A door closed and I tried to keep another door open. Grew up in India, grew up in Mumbai, studied there, and then we went to college together, did our MBA together. And at some point, I always wanted to study economics. I tried to be a trader, and I was awful at trading. So I realized, I should do something else. In the process of that, I sort of discovered the world of economics, central banking, monetary economics, and so on and so forth. So I just sort of kept pursuing that interest, and then landed here in the US to do my PhD in economics. Though I was sort of interested in economics, because I had spent time in finance and in markets, I always had an interest in that, kept up with it. And once again, a series of accidents, essentially, and coincidences, which sort of got me together, and I sort of became what I call myself a financial economist. So for the past 20 plus years, I've been, and actually even going beyond that, even my PhD dissertation was at the intersection of economics and financial markets and trading and so on and so forth. So, worked in the what I call the exchange space here in the US as well as in India. And while doing all of this, this is just me sort of with sort of broad range of interest. I was always interested in policy issues. Growing up in India and then coming here and looking at sort of how the US system works compared with sort of the Indian system in terms of how the government operates, how industry sort of reacts with the government and how policy are developed and rules and regulations are developed. I realized, while I'm here, I should sort of take advantage of the opportunity. So once again, it's a long story, but I got this opportunity to work. There's a choice, either go join the private sector, continue working in the private sector, or segue to the public sector and work. And just before that, this one last point, I did, as I say in Hindi, right, Pagu Kutta Kata types, did move back to India for 5 years after being here for about 15 plus years. And it was interesting because I was doing private sector stuff. I sort of got a fair amount of exposure to policy making, working with SEBI, Reserve Bank of India, the Ministry of Finance, and a whole host of other government agencies. So got an appreciation for how that works. So anyway, so long story short, I landed back here in the US on the policy side. It just, I was at the right place at the right time at the CFTC. So I did that for about 10 years. And once again, I was in that organization for about 9 years. I had like 5 different titles in those 9 years. It was sort of very unique because, I just like kept growing. And then here I am for the past 2 years at the ABA. Some people choose to spend their whole careers in the federal government, in public service. In my case, as I said, I get bored easily, so I was looking for something else. So here I am back in the world of banking. So I'll pause here and sort of.
Yes, superb, superb. What an inspiring story, I must say. A lot of tenacity to keep studying and work back and forth. Work in
No,
the
so
US,
that's like
in
a big
India.
part of it. That's a big part of it. I tell the our new hires, I'm like forever research assistant for others in the organization. Anybody wants any piece of data, you can call me. I will pull up that spreadsheet. I work with attorneys. I work a lot of people who are very not comfortable with data, but they will call me. My boss will call me, or somebody else will call me, and I will open up a spreadsheet, do the number crunching, and send it to them. And then constantly learning, constantly studying, constantly sort of being curious. So I think that's a big part of what I do, I guess. So.
Yeah, amazing, really. So very inspiring, Sai. And having worked both in the US and India, what differences do you see?
So it's on the sort of on the face of it, you're tempted to sort of make those comparisons because the styles are different. Americans work in a particular manner. The society is different. And in India, it's like it can look as if it's more structured, but I'm sort of dated, right? I'm talking about how it was when we grew up. But when I was back in India more recently, India has changed. So more I see, it's like it's called the Western practices, sort of global practices, and the one thing which I was never sure about was. Here, in the US, people talk about the revolving door between federal government policy and the private sector. You work in the private sector, you go and work in the government, and then you come back, and back and forth happens. Less so in India because you have the formal sort of IAS structure and other things, but other opportunities to sort of engage in the process. So I really don't. Even when I was back in India, I had opportunities to just be myself. I, on the surface, you see differences, but you peel it away. I don't see much of a difference. I might be wrong, but this is just my view.
Yes, yes, of course. This is a new India now. So it'll be great to have, talented people like you back here. But tell us from a, perspective of, let's say, young Indians who are just getting into the workforce, right? Give them an idea of what it took you to succeed. So let them sort of see, what it takes.
So, as I said earlier, taking risks. You need to dream. But so I've been a dreamer all along. As I said, I didn't have a background in economics. I did my BCom from Podar College, and I had this crazy wacky friend who introduced me to economics. I just sort of kept up with it, I just sort of I knew I had to go do that at some point in time. I don't know when it will happen, but I was at every stage of life when I think about sort of the big decisions I took. On hindsight, I hadn't done a lot of homework. I just said, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm doing. Some people spend a lot of time researching, preparing, and stuff like that. For me, yeah, I want to do this. When the opportunity comes, I just go. So I never gone after money. I was just thinking about this. I never switched jobs because I want more money. I have always looked at where am I having fun. The job should be fun. If the job is not fun, then I don't want to be there. I'll go do something else. Want to learn. I want to grow, I never gone after money. And I've been fortunate. I've worked with folks who have taken care of me. So maybe I'm sort of fortunate. There will be some others who might not be in the same situation. They're working with awful bosses. And obviously, you shouldn't sort of tolerate that. If they're awful, they don't pay you well, they're going to be mistreating you in so many other ways. The other thing is, I think, I think what I tell even my younger folks whom we hire is, as I said earlier, never stop being a student. I think one thing I've seen with a lot of people is once they hit their 40s and especially get into their 50s, they just stop learning. They stop educating themselves. When I was in my late 40s, I taught myself R programming and stuff like that. Nobody asked me to do it because I just wanted to do it. It's not that I'm a programmer or anything of that sort, but I just realized that, if I need to be able to sort of managing a team of people who are, quants, I need to understand what's happening. I need to sort of understand how they do things. So I always invested in myself in terms of human capital. So that's a big thing. I've seen people, both here and in India, who just stop learning, and they just go through the sort of the daily chores of work, I guess. And it's a personal choice, right? But in my case, I just made sure that I keep educating myself. So that's take risk, treat yourself well, work-life balances. We can talk some more about that. Constantly educate yourself, keep learning, keep up with what's happening, and then never chase money. Money will come.
Money will come. Amazing, amazing 5 lessons that you've given us in such a short time. And I must tell you, I know some people here on the program. There's Raj from the US in Princeton, Sudhir from Netherlands, Neeraj from Kenya, a couple of people from Dubai, and they've still continue to invest in their learning. So I think what you're saying is really reinforcing what a lot of these people are doing, because they've all joined up the CXO 90-day challenge, and they're at this stage of their life also they want to sort of learn new skills and continue. So I think that's great to share that with everybody here, right? So let's just move on. I mean, when you worked in India, right, what did you think, what helped you succeed here? And then we'll go to the US.
So, what helped me succeed? So, this is different, right? When I was, way back when, after we finished college, and worked for 3 years, um, and then later on when I went back to India, it's very interesting. So I found myself in the situation where I had to reach out to people for various things. I had this external facing role. And I'll just give you this is very interesting. So I have this good professional acquaintance. He works for one of the large banks in New York. He's got a PhD in physics. And now he's been, he's an interest rate strategist. And I was chatting with him, and he said, he calls himself the physicist who can maintain eye contact. A lot of scientists will be shy in the bookish and stuff like that. So I was thinking, how do I sort of, how do I brand myself? How do I describe myself? So I said, I'm the economist who's willing to cold call, right? So pick up the phone and being able to call people, right? So even early on in my career, as somebody just a year out of my business school, I used to be picking up the phone and calling CFOs of the large corporates in India for specific things, but I was never shy. I just used to pick up the phone and talk to them and have conversations with them. And I sort of continue. And what's interesting to me was people are very tolerant. The senior folks are very tolerant. They want to hear you just because the junior guy. It's not that they mistreat you or anything of that sort. So I'm not sure answering your question, but I think when I think about one is being able to pick up the phone and talk to people. Social skills matter. Technical skills obviously matter. If you don't do your homework, if you don't have the details right. One of the things which is important here as well as in India is, and I've seen that with some really smart bosses. I will go to them with a PowerPoint deck, and I would have sort of looked at it a bunch of times, and there would be slide number, if there are say 30 slides in it, and slide number 20, there are 10 data points, and one of them is wrong, and I had missed it. The smart bosses will go to that immediately. I've seen it here, I've seen it in India, right? So I always made sure, learn from that experience that if I'm going to somebody with a deck, I need to know every data point that's there, how it's coming and stuff like that. I can't say I will go back and find out what it is and come back to you, because most of these guys don't have time, guys and gals, taking decisions and stuff like that. So the attention to detail is sort of, it's pretty important. And I do that now. I'm a manager. When people come to me, I ask them questions and I tell them the same thing. Make sure this is how I learned. This is what you should be doing in some sense, I guess. And then the last thing would be just for now is it was very interesting. So I was back in India. I was with the National Stock Exchange for some time. They were launching a new product. Those days, I think the CNBC station used to broadcast from the NSE building, launching a new product, and they wanted some staffer to do a live interview when the product was getting launched. And they turned around and say, who has got any experience, who's comfortable in front of TV? So I said, I'm happy to do it. So they came to me, and it was interesting. So I, being early on, right after my 12th standard, that summer, I went to a public speaking course. I don't know why, as an 18-year-old, I realized that I had this realization, I need to learn to be a good public speaker. So I went to a public speaking class, and I kept working on it, right? And once again, this is not something anybody told me. It just came to my head, I need to do it. And even so, that sort of helped me right through my career, that I was just comfortable. Not everybody might be comfortable. I like to believe I've worked on it. I still have goosebumps when I have to sit in front of a camera, in front of a stage, even when I'm doing this. But over time, you get used to it, right? So that's the other thing, right? Once again, social skills, paying attention to details, and then it has been helpful because when you get to a certain stage in your career, you need to interact with the media a lot. And if you're one of those who's comfortable doing it, it's just good. It's one of the things that, and it helps you professionally and so on and so forth.
Oh, thanks. Some great tips there. Social skills. Always reach out to senior people, right? They're actually happy to help you. And this is what happens. A lot of people whom I coach also in their careers, they're a little shy. And one of the questions they always ask me is, what if I'm stuck in the lift with my CEO or some senior guy? What do I say? So what's your take on that?
So it's interesting. So I can't name names because they're all still around and pretty important positions. So I was in there was a dinner at a leadership's residence. He had invited somebody else who is now pretty senior in the government here. And I had happened to sort of know the person because I knew from a different work stream and stuff like that. But the person necessarily we didn't know each other. And nobody was, so the gentleman came, he was with his spouse, and so here is a bunch of people from ABC organization, me and all of us sitting and talking, and here's this other really big guy comes with his wife. He doesn't know anybody, and nobody's going and talking to him, right? So because I had met him a long time back, I just went, introduced myself, reminded him, when we had met. And then, it's a long conversation we had. And then he was asking what I'm doing and so on and so forth. And then I ended up actually having lunch with the person because, it was just those conversations, right? And I know it doesn't come easy for folks. When I look back at my own career, there was this stage when I was very bookish. I used to sit and do all the technical stuff. And I had one of my seniors who came and said, hey, this is all good, but you need to walk around the floor and talk to others in the team, in the organization. I was a research guy and said, no, you need to go and talk to the product guys. You need to talk to the sales guys because they're external facing. And I don't know how to start a conversation. Right. So, but I just realized when the realization, I was fortunate that somebody knocked on my door and said, Sai, you need to get out of your shell. You need to go and talk to people. So then I just sort of make it a habit. And the third or fourth time you do it, it becomes a habit and it's pretty easy to do it. So it doesn't mean that I'm not a social butterfly or anything. I can go to a conference, have my drink and a meal and just walk out and go and crash. But there are other times, when need arises, happy to sort of talk. But I think to your point, what do you do if the person is in the elevator? Don't be desperate. It's like if the person is in a mood, or you just introduce yourself, right? If the person doesn't know you, just introduce themselves. Americans like to talk a lot about sports, football, and so on and so forth. American football. I'm not big into it. I'm still the guy who watches cricket, and waking up in the morning and watching the Women's World Cup soccer. And a lot of folks are not interested in it, right? So you just find other things to sort of talk about.
Great. I think, there are two, three things there which you've brought out. One is that, it doesn't matter if people are senior, they're human beings, right? Everybody would like a conversation. So it's good. I'm surprised because this morning we were having our CXO 90 Challenge coaching session. And this is exactly what we were discussing as to how people get so busy doing their own stuff that they don't step out, and then they don't network, and then they don't build that ability of talking and knowing people around. And it's a miraculous that you're giving them the same advice that we were discussing. And the other point is that you brought out was, as an 18-year-old, you got out there and decided to go for a public speaking course. And this is a skill today, wherever you are in the world, your ability to communicate, especially as you go as a leader, right? Because you have thoughts in your mind, and if you're not able to communicate that, then it's lost in the sense that it's in your head, right? And it's such a great thing for you to share, and I'm sure all the audience that's watching will take that away. And so tell us, how do you as a leader share your thoughts, because it's all there, right? And your team needs to get the message and get there.
Yeah, so leadership is very difficult, as we all know, right? It's they don't teach you leadership in a business school, and I should be honest, I'm still working on my so-called leadership skills, I guess. As I said, it's like you need to keep up with the team. You need to stay. People need to respect you. Be nice to people. So I've been as I said earlier, I've been very, very fortunate that I have had managers who took care of me. They looked out for me. Right? So I'm very, very thankful that I'll never ever take it for granted. So for me, as a manager, I just want to make sure it's payback time for me. Right? I want to be at least as good as my subordinates as my managers were to me. They went like way beyond. They anticipated what issues I'm going to be having. They never articulated it, but they had internalized it. They were thinking about me, and they came knocking on my door and helped me out right when I was in a pinch. So that's like it's with me for the rest of my life, and so I that's the first thing, sort of guiding principle for me, I guess. I have an open door policy. Staff can come anytime and knock on my door, and I will always talk to them. I'm now fortunate, we finally moved to a new office where everything is in glass, so there's no hiding behind. The way I start is I tell them, what questions do you have? Before I can ask you any questions, I might be the last person they're speaking to, but I always tell them, why don't you ask me some questions before I start asking you questions? Just give them the opportunity to sort of and then just being very transparent about things. I don't play games. I don't think so. I play games. I don't know what my staff will say, I guess. And there was one other point which I just forgot. It was this brilliant thought, but it'll come back to me.
It'll come back. I think lots of.
And the last thing was empowering folks. Right? It's when people come and make a judgment call on what are the strengths and give them space to grow. Once again, I had managers who did it. They trusted me, and that's helped me grow. So, for instance, we had a weekly call that happens, and there was a very important issue that came up, and the team had been doing all the analysis, and I was just parroting what they were telling me. So we had to brief a different group. So when they asked me, said, "Hey, Sai, you want to sort of share?" What analyses you guys have been doing. I just said, hey, the two guys who actually did the analysis are on the call. Why don't you guys go ahead and say, I don't want to be the guy. Most of our sort of briefings we do, I'm not the guy briefing anymore. I just let my guys go and do it because I don't want to score any brownie points. And I tell my folk, if you guys succeed, I succeed. I'm very selfish. I can't be everywhere. I can't be doing anything. But if you guys succeed, then I will succeed, right? So that's sort of another guiding principle.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I don't know why you're saying you're still on the way to your leadership lessons. There's lots of gems there for any manager to pick up. And I think the nice thing is, the fact that I think managers have been nice to you, right? So you're really giving back, and so that's an amazing thing to really bring out. And I'm sure there's a lot to learn. So now we've seen the successful side, right, all along. Now let's get a little more candid and share really with a lot of the folks here who are coming up the ladder, right? What challenges might you have faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so it's not been easy. It's the I'm like at the stage of life where I sit and study Vedanta and things like that. And I wish I had taken those things more seriously earlier on in my career, because it wouldn't have made any changes to the outcome in some sense, or my decisions I have taken, but just agonizing. Right? There's so much uncertainty in life, and because we think I'm the one doing everything and I'm the one who's sort of driving the results, which is completely false. One thing which, when I sort of reflect on some of these things, is the amount of time I've spent just agonizing over outcomes and what will happen, what will not happen. A lot of wasted time. So this is with hindsight, and I tell my kids, and they don't want to listen to this. It's very hard, right? But if you ask me, looking back, just taking myself way too seriously and just agonizing and worrying myself to death. So that's one issue. The one other thing, which is in terms of, as I said, as I said, my professional sort of career path is different in the sense, um, uh, I never been in the line function, right? So I've always been what I would call sort of the knowledge worker. And what that means is, as you go about your career, there are these, you see opportunities. Somebody's making 5 times more money, or they got a huge bonus because on the sales side, marketing side, or whatever, and you want to try your hand at it, right? And it has happened at various times when you say, "Hey, I wish I could be the person," but knowing that that's not who I am, right? So it took a while for me to realize that there are certain things I'm really bad at. I'm not very good at. And that comes when I'm looking for jobs. I get a sense that every few years I've been sort of out in the market job hunting, but I'm done now. But the you realize that you made these career choices, and when you go out marketing yourself, you might be applying for a position, but somebody else is looking at you and realizing that this person is not fit for a line job, right? So that can be very humbling, I guess, and very frustrating. Hey, I can do it. I'm smarter than this person, or whatever. So knowing your limitations is it's sort of a critical part of things. You'll always find somebody who is, speaks better than you, knows the subject matter much better than you, can also do a lot of coding and stuff like that. And that hurts because, hey, I didn't learn that much of coding. I should have done more of coding, or whatever. So just finding, accepting who you are, understanding, your strengths and weaknesses, not in like, what are your 3 top strengths and 3 top weaknesses, not from that perspective. And then playing to your strength. And, it's like, I wish I had all of this figured out 30 years ago, but I think I'm inching to the point where I know, okay, I'm good at this. This is my strength, and I'll keep playing to it. Type stuff. So, and then you make mistakes. When I sort of think back at things I've done, it's like, oh, did you actually do that? So I've made, I've goofed up a lot. I've done stupid things, but maybe along the way I've paid a price for it. But it's okay.
Great.
I never
think
said the one thing which I know this is important, I guess, and you see that, right? People get into trouble, right? And once again, one should be very, very careful when sort of even saying this, right? Which is I'm always striving to not sell my soul. Right? If you see something bad happening or something unethical, being able to sort of walk away from it. And your instincts will tell you, and you just pray that you have the strength. First of all, you recognize it, and then you have the strength to sort of walk away from it.
Great, great. I think there's some great pearls there. In fact, you remind me of a paper. I think it was the Harvard professor Christensen who's written, that whole. When he was there, he went and looked at all the people, successful people, and he found that all these, highly successful Harvard grads were ending up doing the wrong thing. Getting into staying out, getting into jail, broken homes, alcoholism, lots of money, but lives completely. And that's great advice, in terms of, because in the long run, right, in 30, 40 years of a great career, I think one is recognizing what you're really good at and playing to your strength. I think that's a great lesson, right? And I think that comes straight out of your Vedanta class of Swadharma, right? Which is the essence of who you are. And while we're having this conversation, I can see some people pinging in. Just Vedanta is just to let a lot of people you here know, comes from the in Hindi, right, or in Sanskrit, Ant is the end. So the last portion of the Vedas is known as Vedanta, and all these are texts which have been written as part of the so-called Sanatana Dharma that prevailed in this part of the world. And Sanatana Dharma really means eternal principles, which is really principles that were ready, were can apply or applied 20,000 years ago, and it will apply for the next 20,000. So I think great advice there, because one way walking away, from unethical stuff, etc., calls for exactly like you said, don't sell your soul, right? So I think there's great advice there for a lot of people. And I think Sudhir has summed it up very well. Accept who you are, recognize your strength, and play towards it. Super, super, Sudhir. I think that's a great takeaway from the audience. And as we go on, right? So let's say, for example, right, you've described yourself as a knowledge worker, right? Which is really in terms of, right? So, and, there are line jobs and there are support jobs, so to say, right? So, what is the one thing you would say to a lot of people who are not in the so-called frontline jobs, right? Because there's a lot of back work, right? There are a lot of IT people here on the call. I can see they may not be necessarily representing the front end, but they do a lot of stuff. How do they go about succeeding in their careers, and what are the challenges that you have faced in your career?
So, well, I told you that I'm I'm a knowledge worker. When a few years ago, this is like a long time back. So the schools here have this day. It's called career day, when parents come and talk about this is kids in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standard kids, and so that's the only time I've done it. So I went and I was trying to figure out, I'm an economist, what do I tell them, right? How do you, explain to the kids what I do? So I was thinking about it, and there's this concept of handyman in the US, right? The guy whom we call for all sorts of stuff, right? They just come and fix, the generalist in some sense. So I had a picture. So there's this thing called a handyman and a waste thing where, they have all the tools around it, and, that's how we signal them as a person. So where I'm going is that if you think about what we do, irrespective of which function you're in, we are solving problems every day. We are problem solvers, right? So whether you're a programmer building something or whatever, right, you're trying to solve the problem, right? So so it's been helpful for me, because if I think from that perspective, I'm not necessarily if you think about sort of some of the career choices I had to make, was to not get fixated or too attached to the particular organization or the particular role I'm doing, right? Because you say, hey, I'm this, then this is all I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And what happens is you don't see the opportunities that are there beyond the sort of the small box you might be sitting in. So I think it's like if you sort of step back a bit and say, what am I doing? Functionally, what am I doing? I'm just solving problems. Here are the set of problems that are coming to me on a daily basis, but I stand up and look around. There are other problems, there are other opportunities out there, and can I be a source of solution for others? And then when you're in the elevator with somebody, you like somebody who is just in a different organization, different part of the organization, just doing some interesting work, has got say a new $1 million grant or whatever. And presumably, if an IT person, they're going to have IT needs. You got to know the people there. You send some opportunities, and you're stuck in the elevator with sort of the senior guy of this the group or unit. You can talk to the person, say, hey, I heard about what you guys are doing. If you ever want to sort of chat, I have some ideas. And it's possible the person will say, why don't you just walk with me and we'll continue working and talking about it. And before you know what's happening, you might say, why don't you come and work for me? Right. So I think this is, I'm trying to sort of connect a whole bunch of different themes I'm saying, but what are we doing on a day-to-day basis? In terms of first principles, and then stepping up and looking as what are other opportunities there, and then deploying some social skills, I guess. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yes,
that's
yes. No, absolutely. There's lots to take away there. But here's another one. Let's look at it this way, right? So now your title is the chief economist. So there are. It obviously presumes that there are many other economists there, right? So you're the special one when it comes to being the economist. So what did you have to do to break out of that economist and get to the level of chief economist, right? What do you think really helped you succeed, and what do people in middle management need to do to get to that next level and get that C title?
Yeah, so once again, I should be very, very watchful, mindful of what I'm saying and how much I can share. But if I will sort of generalize it, it is as a staff economist, so happened, I think there was the right place at the right time. And then I used to be in these conversations and discussions where people were talking about issues, and I realized that, hey, I have something valuable and worth sharing. There was knowledge gaps, and I have the knowledge to sort of fill in the gap. So I started, sharing it, talking on the, being a resource for folks. So, for instance, when in one of these organizations, when I sort of jumped from being a staff economist to chief economist, I met this friend of mine who had worked in the organization years ago, and I was sharing my frustration with him, saying, "Hey, I know so much, but I'm getting bored. I can contribute more, but I don't know what's happening, how to do it." And he had a very interesting piece of advice for me, which is once people know that you have something to offer and that you're willing to offer, your phone will not stop ringing. Right. So once he told me that, that was an aha moment for me. And so what I did was, and I started doing was just be a resource for others. I was working with lots of attorneys and others, and they used to have all sorts of questions, which some other folks might get very frustrated with. But I used to sit with them every time somebody called me. There's many of them were senior to me, and say, "Hey, Sai, I have this question, a very basic question." I said, "I'll come down to your office. Let's talk about it." So a lot of education, a lot of simple stuff, but then over time, people realize that this person has something to offer, and then they start calling you. And then there was this opportunity for a chief economist position, and the person running the organization said, "Hey, here's a guy who might be a good resource, a good candidate," and took a leap of faith in sort of putting me in the position. So person was taking a risk, and then I need to be accountable, and so on and so forth. But I think it's the attitude more than anything else. Many times people will ask questions, you don't have the answers, but you go do your homework, and I never say no to people. try to figure
Amazing.
out a solution. It's too late.
Yes, yes. So what I hear from there is, actually step beyond your job, add value to people all around. So have something really there to offer. And when you become of use to a lot of people, people sort of will reach out to you, and therefore, that's how you build your reputation, and that's how you build your credibility. I think there's some great lessons there, right? In terms
So
of,
that's one of the things which is not my idea. Somebody else, I heard some very successful person say, which is, uh, if you're looking for a promotion and you want to be, sort of aspiring for a particular job, I guess, further up in the hierarchy, uh, act as if you already have the job. Okay, so that when the position opens up, they're looking to fill the position, then they see you and they say, okay, this person already has that stuff. So question of why not, and should be the question, why not this person? Shouldn't be why this person, right? So it should be obvious to folks that this person is already doing. So when people like my juniors come and say, hey, can you promote me to this position? I say, act as if you already have it. Don't tell me once I get that position, then I will start performing at that level. That's too
yeah.
late.
No, absolutely. I think that's a gem there, is for people to take responsibility, irrespective whether you have that position or not. You play that part. And when people see that you're already, your bar is very high and you're already doing that kind of job, people will give you that chance. Because I think everybody who makes it, somebody's taken a leap of faith in them, right? And it's very much like a stock, right? You buy a stock because in the hope that it's going to appreciate. So people invest in you because of the potential they see in you, right? And if you've demonstrated it, so I think there's a great lesson in there, in terms of, which also comes to a certain area in terms of being, you sort of figured out that you were a knowledge worker, right? So therefore, in terms of personal branding for a lot of executives, what is there something that you can share?
Well, I think I already told you, right? The economist who can cold call, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, I think it's like, once again, this is just very, very personal, right? It's, I can't be put in a box. So for certain other things, you have to be, in the box. I'm the marketing guy. I'm this, I'm that, with specialists. But you want people to know that if there's a question related to branding, and you need to call so and so. So.
Okay. Great. So I'm now going to sort of invite, as we reach the top of the hour, I'm just going to request the audience, if they have any questions, please put it on the chat so we can hear from, Sai, in terms of, what his advice is. And while you're putting those questions in the chat, I'll take up some other issues with Sai. And so now that you're at this level, right? So one of the things you said was act the part, right? Is there any other advice that you'd like to give to mid-level managers?
So it's depends on what's your aspiration, how hungry you are, right? So this is Jane Fraser, the sort of the CEO of Citi, and it was very interesting. She was talking about when she was she was running Citi's Latin American operations, or she was somewhere in the career path. And she went to Vikram Pandit. He used to be the CEO of Citi those days, and just asking some career advice. And apparently, Vikram Pandit said, it's like, figure out where you want to be, and then what are the various steps you need to take to get there, right? You look at other people's career paths and say, how did that person get there? So you might have to do things non-linear, right? So, if you, for instance, you become a subject matter expert in a particular issue, and in a particular sort of line function. But to get to a job, let's assume you're a CFO often, or in finance function, but you want to get into a job, a position which will require some marketing savvy and some strategy type sort of responsibilities, then how will people know that you can do it, right? So you might have to make these career choices where you say, okay, I will go and I'll take if the organization allows, or go and join another organization where you stop being the finance guy for a while and actually build those other skills. Many times you get the credibility only if you have done it. And so the question is, as a mid-level sort of professional, are you willing to take that risk to move out of your comfort zone? I think you need to move out of your comfort zone. As long as if you're stuck in the comfort zone, you're not going to go anywhere. I think you become a prisoner. It's what they call the velvet coffin. It's very comfortable, but that's where you're going to be.
Yes,
I think that's like a big thing, I guess, which people struggle with. And I'm very sympathetic to folks who say, I'm done, this is what I'm going to be doing. But then find peace with it. Don't compare and, don't aspire if you're not willing to sort of take those risks.
yeah. So be hungry and build a career plan. That's one of the things we teach in our CXO 90-day challenge. So I think that you're reinforcing that. And I'm going to take some questions now from the audience. So Javed from Kolkata says, where should we put our focus on learning, aligning with the trends for the BFSI sector? Since you have some, just take a shot at it.
So when you say BFS, banking, financial services,
Yes, that's right.
sorry, I'm slow on some of the acronyms. And this is coming from just my background, right? And which is the world of banking and financial services compared to most other sort of sectors. This sector is incredibly highly regulated. Okay, so regulations are just huge, right? There are global regulations, extends. You can be in any other sector. I don't think you have sort of regulations. Maybe the medical field has regulations, but in BFSI, there is a huge amount of regulations. And it's helpful if people can spend some time educating themselves about rules and regulations. It's not something just the lawyers need to do or the compliance folks need to do. So if you are a line person, you're a technology person in a BFSI organization, it's really helpful because a lot of the rules and regulations drive strategic choices. They can constrain, if you think about solving an optimization problem, in the BFSI sector, rules and regulations have an important sort of constraint function. It's rated pretty high. So one suggestion I would have is, become familiar with the regulatory environment, especially what we call binding constraints. There are certain constraints which just bind very restrictive of your organization, and people figure out ways to sort of get around it. Not every rule applies equally to the same every organization. So if you're in an organization, what is it which is sort of constraining growth of the organization and stuff like that? So that's one piece of advice.
Yes, great. And we have Sudhir from Netherlands, and his question is, given the rapid tech changes and dynamic geo-financial dynamics, is there one specific skill that you would call out as the most contemporary for upcoming executives?
So it's the first I'm sort of thinking on my feet here. The whole world is, it's sort of flooding with data. And data analytics has become so important to it, right? So if you're a person who doesn't have that skill set, then it's worthwhile to invest and just become comfortable with numbers. If you're a marketing guy, I remember you used to run away from numbers in business school.
Yes. Came back.
But I think so that's one thing, right? And then and also I think regulations matter here also. Understanding what I don't know. I keep coming back to regulations because that drives things a lot. You might understand everything about your data and about your business, but if you don't understand regulations, you could be in a lot of trouble.
Okay, great. So
I'm sure you guys have something else.
yes. Now, the ability to handle data, I think that's a great one because a lot of decisions are getting very, very obviously. It was always there, but having the right data and being able to analyze it, cut it, churn it, right? So is a fantastic skill, right? Oh, great.
So just on that, can I,
Yeah, yeah.
this might be helpful for folks. Everybody talks about AI and machine learning and stuff like that, right? This is a huge thing. Everybody sees opportunities. But I will just say it's like I'm in the skeptic gang in the sense of things will get embedded, people will figure out how to use it and stuff like that. I think there's a fair amount of overselling that's happening in a new shiny object out there. But I think it's important for people to know what's possible and then also invest some. There are all these online courses available. If you are in that field, then teach yourself something about machine learning and AI, and really focus on what are the shortcomings. Because you get a lot of sales pitches from folks about machine learning and AI. Nobody tells you what are the shortcomings and weaknesses. So I think that's one thing at a very practical level today, which I will encourage folks to do. Just like,
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we'll take the last question as we reach the top of the hour. And Javed is asking, knowing that the world is getting trapped under debt, what future trends do you see? Your prediction?
So the world has been trapped under debt for a long time, and I worry for my kids. If we don't sort of escape from it, I'm going to be gone. But our kids and succeeding generations are going to be sort of paying the bill for that. I guess. I think choices will have to be made. I really don't have a clue. I worry about it, but I can't do anything about it. It's one of those things where things you control, things you don't control, and that's something which it's a good question, but yeah, I don't have anything.
Yeah, great. Okay, as we're reaching the top of the hour side, any last words of advice on anything for aspiring CXOs?
No, just have fun. And the other thing is, it's like, as I said, I would say that I've been very fortunate. I consider myself blessed, I guess. Right? I don't take it for granted. I never let this go to my head. As I said, I'm happy being a guy playing gilli danda on 14th Road in Chipur.
Okay.
That's always me.
Yes. So while you stay hungry and foolish, also remain grounded in more ways than one, right? So have the hunger, but stay grounded. And if you've been privileged, I think give back. I think that's the real essence that we pick out from your side, right? So thanks so much. I know we've taken an hour on a holiday for you, and thank you really so much. I'm sure a lot of people across the world, are going to benefit from the kind of advice, because not everybody has access to chief economist of the ABA. So thank you so much, and thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
ladies and gentlemen from across the world. And goodbye, and we will be in touch for the next show shortly. Just keep tuned. If you're an aspiring manager, or an aspiring CXO, then this is just the right place to be. Good night, good morning again, and goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye.